The morning I stepped outside and saw my grandfather's dock floating in pieces across Clearwater Lake, I thought I was still dreaming. The HOA president, Rel Pétan, called it a community safety violation, said they had to remove it for liability reasons. But that dock wasn't theirs. It wasn't even close to their property. It was built by my grandfather in 1978 with cedar planks and bare hands, and now it was gone along with the piece that Lake once carried. A week earlier, I'd spotted the first cabins. 8 of them, half-finished, standing like invaders along the western shore, the shore that, according to every deed my family ever held, was ours. The banner read, Ridgewood Meadows HOA Development, Phase 1. When I paddled closer, I saw concrete foundations, power lines, even numbered lots. Lot 14, Lot 15, Lot 16. It looked official, corporate, legal. But that was Donovan property, 12 acres of land my grandfather bought before anyone cared about this lake. I tried to tell myself it was a mistake, that maybe they'd misread a boundary line, but then came the silence calls not returned. Emails ignored construction noises spreading like infection through the forest. When the dock disappeared, I drove straight to the HOA office. The place reeked of fresh paint and control. Relly sat behind a shiny desk, a hair-sculpted smile practiced. I told her she'd trespassed, that she'd destroyed private property. She unrolled a county plat map from 2018 and tapped it with a manicured nail. According to official records, she said this area is designated as community shoreline. I told her my deed was older than that map. She tilted her head. Then you'd better find it before the county decides it doesn't exist. That night I sat in my kitchen with a photocopy of the old deed. Faded ink, water stains. But still legible, 12 acres, including 70% of the lake. It was proof. Proof buried in a system that had forgotten it existed. When I called the recorder's office, the clerk put me on hold for 10 minutes, came back and told me it could take up to 2 months to access pre-1985 files. 2 months. By the 3rd week, 14 cabins stood on my land. The HOA installed a new dock larger than mine had ever been stamped with their logo. The local paper ran a story praising Relly's vision for sustainable community living. I read it with my fists clenched. Then the letter came $500 a day fine for unauthorized lake usage. They were charging me for standing on my own shoreline. For the first time, I wondered if I was wrong. Maybe the deed didn't matter anymore. Maybe after all these years, my claim was just an outdated story about a man clinging to family land no one cared about. I sat up late, staring at the empty water, thinking of my grandfather, of what he'd built, and what I was about to lose. Then something in me hardened. I wasn't crazy. And if the system had lost the proof, I'd dig it up myself. I found a lawyer named Callahan, scruffy, overworked, but honest. He said, if we can find the original surveyor from 1977, that's your key. So I drove 4 hours through mountain snow to the Montana Historical Society. The archivist was a tiny woman with thick glasses who led me to a basement that smelled like dust and time. She pulled out a box labeled Clearwater Lake Surveys 1970s. Inside, rolled maps yellowed with age. When she unrolled one, I saw my grandfather's name printed along the edge. Donovan property, 12 acres, surveyed 1977. Signed by a licensed surveyor, Fletcher Grayson. She made certified copies for me and told me Grayson was still alive, living in a retirement home in Butte. I visited him 2 days later. He was 88, thin as a rail, but his eyes sharp as nails. When I told him my name, he smiled. Nash Donovan's grandson, huh? I remember that survey. Solid man, paid in cash. He studied the map for a long time. They filed a plat map without a licensed surveyor's signature. I nodded. His jaw tightened. That's fraud. Clear as day. When I asked if he'd testify, he said, absolutely. I spent 40 years measuring truth. I'm not about to let them redraw it. Back in Missoula, Callahan and I built the case old tax receipts, inheritance papers, photos of my dock, every letter Relly had sent. Then he found something explosive, an internal HOA email from Rel to her lawyer. It read, Donovan doesn't have the original deed. If we finish construction before he finds it, we can claim adverse possession. Oy. That was the moment I stopped feeling small. They hadn't made a mistake, they'd planned a theft. We filed a quiet title action and an emergency injunction to stop construction. The court date came in January. That morning, I sat beside Callahan and old Fletcher in his wheelchair. Across the aisle, Relly arrived in her gray blazer, flanked by 3 lawyers. She didn't look at me. When the judge called our case, Callahan presented the 1977 Survey the Tax Records, the Chain of Title. Fletcher testified, calm and proud, explaining every inch of his work from nearly 50 years ago. When the HOA's attorney tried to question his memory, Fletcher leaned forward. "I don't need to remember," he said. "I have the documentation. And water levels don't move property lines, counselor. That's surveying law." Then Callahan played our ace, the email. He read it aloud while the courtroom went silent. "If we complete construction before he locates proper documentation, we can claim adverse possession." Every word landed like a hammer. Relay jumped to her feet, shouting that it was taken out of context. The judge slammed her gavel. "Sit down, Ms. Peaton, or I'll hold you in contempt." You could feel the room shift. Even HOA members in their matching blue shirts were staring at her like strangers. One man stood and yelled, "You told us it was legal." Minutes later, the judge gave her ruling. "Based on the evidence, I find that Mr. Donovan is the rightful owner of the disputed 12 acres, including the western shoreline of Clearwater Lake. The HOA's construction constitutes trespass. All structures are to be removed within 90 days. Damages awarded $750,000. It was over. Relly's face drained of color. Her attorneys started packing up without a word. The gavel hit wood again, final and heavy. Outside, reporters swarmed. HOA members shouted questions, accusations. I didn't answer any of them. I just kept walking toward my truck, the cold air burning my lungs, the sound of shouting fading behind me. Within a week, Relly resigned for health reasons. Within a month, the HOA's finances were exposed. $4.2 million spent illegally. Every homeowner owed thousands in special assessments. Some put their houses up for sale. Others turned on each other online. The county launched an investigation, and when the EPA got wind that the cabins were built too close to the water, they fined the HOA $500,000 more. By spring, Ridgewood Meadows was bankrupt. And me, I rebuilt. The demolition took 3 weeks. 22 cabins ripped apart and hauled away, leaving the shore raw and scarred. When the restoration crew finished, I hired an old carpenter one who'd worked with my grandfather. Together, we built a new dock, stronger, wider cedar again. We carved the name into the main beam, Donovan Landing, as to 1978. Rebuilt 2025 for those who respect the land. No ceremony, no celebration, just quiet work the way my grandfather would have done it. Later, I turned the property into a private conservation lodge, a small, sustainable invitation only. A place for people who understood what land really meant. Anyone tied to that old HOA permanently banned. And when people asked me why I fought so hard, I told them because silence is how thieves win. Because sometimes protecting what's yours isn't about greed, it's about legacy. Justice doesn't need to be loud, it just needs to last.